Kong in the Monsterverse has lived quite a life, from being an orphan to the king of Skull Island, from being almost dead to killing a world-ending robot, Mecha Godzilla. So here in this video we will showcase in a timeline everything Kong has done in the Monsterverse in brief. So let's get to it. The 1800s. The actual date is unknown, but sometime in the late 1800s, Kong was born. His birth was marked by a tragedy as his parents, the last of their kind in Skull Island, were killed off by the Skull Crawlers, led by the big one, the Skull Devil. He was hidden under a pile of rocks and was then left to fend for himself, with only the Eevee people as his companions. 1944. This brings us to the beginnings of the movie Skull Island of 2017, where we saw Gunpei Ikari and Hank Marlow crash land their World War II fighter planes on Skull Island after a brief dogfight in the air. Their fight on land was brought to an end by the intervention of Kong, who was around that time already a gigantic beast, maybe somewhere in the size range of 50 to 70 feet in height, or 15 to 21 meters. 1973. Then chronologically we get to the events of the rest of the movie, where a Monarch team investigating the Hollow Earth entry points came into contact with a juvenile Kong who was by then 104 feet tall or 31.7 meters tall. There in that year, Kong would battle the Skull Crawlers again, which were awakened by the seismic charges dropped by the US soldiers over the island. He would also put an end to the Skull Devil, finally exacting revenge for the death of his parents. The 1980s. Fast forwarding a decade into the future, at some point in the 80s, a group of shipwrecked people would create a village in the coast of Skull Island, and Kong would then befriend a young girl from over there, who was eventually killed by a Kraken, a deep-sea titan that lurks outside the coast of Skull Island. 1993. The events of Skull Island animated series would take place in this year, whereby Kong would finally confront the gigantic Kraken off the coast of Skull Island and eventually kill it. It is here that we also get to see that the ancient Kongs and the Eevee of that island had created a civilization in the past with gigantic structures, which was probably ended by the Skull Crawlers. 1995. In events of the birth of Kong comics, which happens in this year, Monarch agents would get stuck on the island and then later be saved by Kong. Kong here would battle the Death Jackals, the Siren Jaw and a swarm of Mother Longlegs, with the final battle being against a gigantic 200 feet tall titan, a Queen Mother Longlegs. By this time, Kong had grown to be around 60 meters or 200 feet tall himself. 2017. The endings of the Monarch series, the first season, shows an Apex facility already built in Skull Island, where they welcome the return of the characters stuck in the Axis Mundi. The reunion was cut short and was interrupted by a large Kong coming out of the forest and roaring with anger at the group of people there. Here Kong would have been around 250 feet or 72 meters tall. 2019. Although seen in just a glimpse in the monitor screens, Kong in this year would hear the call of Ghidorah, but as an alpha himself he would ignore it. Instead he would hunt down and kill the remaining Skull Crawlers that were awakened by the Monster Zero Skull. The film's novelization explains that Kong ignored Ghidorah's call, wanting nothing to do with the Titans and the world beyond his own Skull Island. 2021. The events of Kingdom Kong takes place in this year, with Kong in the beginning was seen killing a spirit tiger that was hunting a team of Monarch soldiers. Here Kong would face off against a titan called Camazotz, who attracts a perpetual storm over the island which was created by Monster Zero, and therefore causing havoc to Skull Island's ecosystem. Kong would defeat the titan and send it back to the Hollow Earth vortex from whence it came. Between 2021 and 2023, sometime between these years, Monarch would pull in a lot of resources to create a gigantic dome over a portion of the island to house the remaining species of Skull Island. Kong would also be transferred to live there in this site, and before that he would have saved an Eevee girl named Gia from the storm that killed off the entire tribe. By this time Kong would have grown to the size of 337 feet or 103 meters in height, 3 times what he was in 1973. 2024. In this year, a few years after the creation of the dome, the events of Godzilla vs. Kong would take place. So Kong was taken away from that island in order to go to the Hollow Earth via an entry point in Antarctica. On the way he is intercepted by Godzilla and they have their first fight in the ocean. He luckily survives the battle and then goes on to Antarctica, where he gets to the Hollow Earth. He then gets into a fight and killed 2 warbats that were threatening him and the human companions that were with him. He then discovers the ancestral throne room of the Kongs, his ancient home, and gets his battle axe. He would then later be drawn back to the surface to Hong Kong by Godzilla, and they would have a second battle, which he would lose again, almost dying but revived, and surprisingly helps Godzilla later to defeat Mecha Godzilla, effectively killing Mecha G. Between 2025 and 2028, so in the upcoming GXK The Hunted comics, which will be set after 2025, Kong would be living his life in the Hollow Earth, still searching for other members of his species wherever they are. During that time, he will be hunted by a person who has already collected quite a few trophies of the species of Skull Island, and then seeks to get his hands on the king, the Kong. Also there in the storyline, he would battle a couple of monsters, including a feline titan which looks like a cross between a monkey and a cougar. Maybe it's a MILF. And 2028. Now finally in this year, we will get Kong and Godzilla again teaming up to fight titans that are way above their pay grade. Kong here would find an entire tribe or an army of other Kongs, members of his own species, but they would all be under the tyranny of another ape titan called Skar King. In order to defeat this red ape and his titan companion Shimu, Kong would have to seek an alliance with Godzilla and maybe other titans to deal with this world-ending threat. As for the size of Kong as of this time, he might still have the same height, or even if he grows, he'll still be under 350 feet or 107 meters tall. So that's all we have about Kong in brief as of the current setting. Now if you like this video, then watch this other one as well, and do check out our channel for other Monsterverse content. We might have things that you haven't seen before. Like, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video. Take care, fam.